Andrew, welcome to Toronto.
Thank you.
So you're a conservative, but you're anti-Trump. Now, is that a tribe that's growing?
I would like to think so, but it seems actually the forces within the Republican Party are so intense. The tribalization of America has become so deep that it's very hard to find people capable of taking a nuanced position anymore.
Now, is your opposition to the current president against the man, against his leadership, against his shaking things up?
Against the man as a fundamentally unfit human being to run a whelk stall, let alone the United States.
That's pretty harsh.
I don't think
unfit human being.
I think if he becomes CEO of a major publicly traded company, he would be removed on January the 21st.
But Andrew, he was democratically elected.
Yeah.
You know that.
Of course he was. He's a legitimate president.
He has a huge base that's seemingly still there to a degree.
Yep.
So how do you explain that? I
explain it by the way that the United States has polarized such that anybody on one side will be defended by at least 2/3 of their tribe, whatever they do. And if only because that person, I think, is in some ways spiting the other side. They support him precisely because he drives the rest of America crazy.
So when you say he's an unfit man to run America, what particularly were the things that drove you to that conclusion?
First of all, his assault on the truth. The fact that he lies and lies and lies on a daily basis more than, I mean, most politicians lie, okay? They spin, they twist, they try and shade the truth to advance their interests. We're all used to that. The Washington Post has tallied the number of direct falsehoods, denial of reality, that he has uttered since he took office. It's over 1,300 now. That means he's doing it multiple times a day.
So what is it going to take then to shake up that tribal support?
I don't think that tribal support will ever end. And the important thing is not to push it to such an extent that it becomes stronger in resistance. I think he's buoyed to a certain extent by his inheritance of a growing economy, by record low unemployment rates, by a booming stock market, mainly because he hasn't been able to do anything yet to derail that. It might take a serious attempt by the Democrats to win back one of the houses in the Congress in the midterms, or it might, I'm afraid, take place after a catastrophe. The way he is dealing with the real threat of a dictator in a totalitarian country with nuclear weapons, by calling him names, by actually saying out loud that he would destroy the entire country, not the regime, the entire country. The way he is playing absolutely into the narrative of Kim Jong-un is terrifying.
Is it not possible, as some have suggested, that tough talk is the right response with North Korea? That in fact, Trump may be able to negotiate a deterrence deal that he could take into another election?
It's possible as long as you also have engagement at the same time. It's possible as long as your Secretary of State has a way of talking to the other side.
Now, is this current presidency going to lead to something new in American politics?
I just can't say. I don't see any evidence of that happening anytime soon. There's a civil war going on within the Republican Party right now between sane conservatives and what one can only call reactionary radicals.
So where do what you call sane conservatives go? Like, what do they do in this situation?
I think the sane conservatives within the executive branch, within the cabinet, should invoke the 25th Amendment as soon as possible.
Meaning?
Meaning the mechanism constitutionally by which a large majority of the cabinet has to agree the president is temporarily or permanently unfit to conduct his own office.
How likely is that?
How likely is it that his own Secretary of State is calling him a moron? How likely is it that no one in the cabinet actually has stood up against those positions? If you see it close up, I'm told, It is terrifying. This is a man that will go into a blind rage and do things that are absolutely counterproductive and even self-destructive.
I want to ask you particularly about this whole idea of blogging, texting, Snapchat, Instagram, the whole social media world that we live in, especially with this president who seems to use Twitter as his own personal lectern with no filter. You quit that world very definitively after doing a blog, a standout blog for so many years. You quit.
The reason I quit it was because I think it is destructive of the human soul and the human mind, that you cannot actually sustain real thought by having your synapse react every minute to another synapse. That those forums, far from enlarging the possibility of debate, has become instead a force behind this polarization. I mean, Twitter is a mass intimidation machine of mobs of people attempting to harass, expose, and humiliate people of a different view.
Well, that's its most negative characterization. But
I don't see any positive one out there.
You don't see it as a marketplace of ideas, of people being able to access discussion that weren't able to before?
I don't think so. I think it has eviscerated the role of reason and elevated the importance of feeling and emotion in a time when the opposite is actually required. I think it is no accident that this president is a product of that time, that he is the master of Twitter, because he is all feeling and no mind. He is all reaction and no strategy. He is Twitter made manifest. And it's a way in which he's actually not being president. He's essentially acting on Twitter as if he was a rather alienated teenager on 4chan or on a message board just venting. Or, what he is, a 70-year-old Fox News viewer shouting at the television. That is not how a president behaves.
But I can hear even non-Fox supporters shouting at you now, saying it is in fact that liberal elite that we wanted to unseat and shake up, and he's doing it. He's not perfect, but he's doing it.
Yes, I agree with them that many of the forces and ideas that helped Trump win are legitimate, that liberal elites have become far too smug and isolated. But what I think is that issues of trade, of mass immigration, of automation, the insane, what I regard, multiculturalism of the PC left, which has alienated so many people, fomented the rise of right-wing extremism. All that deserves to be tackled head-on, but not with a lunatic, not with someone incapable of doing the job he's supposed to do. That is a surrender. It is actually betrayal of those causes.
You said earlier that Americans knew the type of man they were electing, and they elected him. So you're saying that more than half of America was totally wrong.
They were being, I think it's understandable, given the forces in the society, and certainly given the awfulness of his opponent. Look, I have been the most ferocious critic of Hillary Clinton for 25 years. I despise her and what she stands for and what she says she believes in. But I still endorsed her. I went on television and begged people to vote for her.
So what is America going to learn from this experience? We don't know the end yet. We don't know the final chapter. But at this juncture, we're not even a year in. What has America learned, if anything?
My hope is that one day this will be seen as a cautionary tale for letting your emotions and your fears overwhelm your mind and your hopes. That he will become forever a reference point of things we do not want to do again. And I think he's a threat to the Constitution itself. And so far he's been reined in, but it's only 9 months, and things have got a lot worse.
Andrew, I want to switch gears, do a hard left turn here for a moment, because I don't get to talk to you on a regular basis. And we have something coming up in this country that you know something about. We're legalizing dope. You're a self-described stoner. What do we need to know about legalizing marijuana in Canada that you have discovered in the United States as a regular user of marijuana?
Don't worry about it. It's certainly less worrisome than anybody drinking alcohol.
But you did say that you wrote that stats say that the greater number of adults are using it on a daily basis, much greater than people are drinking on a daily basis, that demographic has grown.
There is a small minority of marijuana use, cannabis users, who use a disproportionate amount of the marijuana taken. And some of that is for all sorts of reasons. For mine, it's insomnia. For other people, and certainly when I started, it was for nausea from HIV medications. But it's also so that I can better listen to music, that I can unwind at the end of the day. I think it's vital and important that we protect young people from this. And my belief in legalization is precisely because I think it's a better way of keeping weed out of the hands of the developing mind, which it can adversely affect and impair.
Has that borne out in the states that have legalized it?
It actually has. And that's been the interesting data that's come across. That in fact, teen use of marijuana in America has been declining and continue to decline under legalization.
But you use the word dependence in your writing about marijuana. I wondered if that was a concern then of yours, that dependence maybe is not a good thing for a regular
No, maybe
doper.
I'm dependent on caffeine and coffee to get up in the morning. I use coffee to get up in the morning and marijuana to go to sleep at night. I'm dependent on both. But we're not having anxious debates about whether Starbucks should be legal or not. It's a question of perspective here. And it's also a question of the costs of prohibition, which are enormous. The number of people who are thrown in jail or have criminal records that really should not have non-violent drug offenders is an absolute disaster. And I think many adults in a lot of responsible places and many responsible parents can use this in a responsible, mature, and adult way as a way to enhance their lives. But this is a rather minor shift. I think it's an enormously positive one. I'm terribly excited that Canada is leading the way on this.
Although there's a bit of a rocky road ahead getting to the legalization with the legislation and the provincial, federal, and the tax, and it's a bit of a
yes, and I think you have to actually be careful about that. I think you have to make sure that the regulations are good, that young people are prevented from access to it, and that we tax it the right way. And so far, I would say, the experience in Washington and Colorado, for example, has been way better than even those of us who wanted it expected.